Good evening. It is 6:30 and members of council are assembled. When you're ready to begin.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting and say good evening to all members of council and everyone joining us in the room this evening, and everyone watching via the live stream. We're glad everybody's with us. Second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and I will read that this evening. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Next item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. No additions, deletions, or amendments. So we're on to adoption of minutes, and we do have a set of minutes there to consider for September 18th, 2023, the regular council minutes, and it's recommended that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of September 18, 2023 as presented. Is the mover and seconder, the Vice Deputy Mayor, Councillor Halpin? Questions or comments to those minutes? Seeing none, then all in favor? That's carried. Okay, so now we're on to public meetings, and we have two public meetings this evening. And so the first one is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2023-042 for work, and is a public meeting under the Planning Act. The meeting on this file is now open. The purpose of the public meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the applicant or their agents. Then we will hear from any members of the public. Members of the public are advised that the ability to appeal the decision on this application may be limited if you have not provided comments on the application before the decision is made. Comments may be made verbally before the committee this evening or submitted to staff in writing before the bylaw is passed. I'll just note that all verbal submissions this evening have a maximum of 5 minutes in length. So after we have heard from the public, the committee will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. I'll now ask the planner on the file to present the application.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. My name is Dave Wellwood. I'm a planning consultant working on behalf of the County of Bruce. In your package, you'll find my planning report for this zoning bylaw amendment. That's Z-2023-042. And you'll also find an attached zoning bylaw amendment for consideration. So this application has been submitted to facilitate a severance. That's a related application that proposes to sever a 2.83 hectare parcel of land that would be conveyed to the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy for conservation purposes. This parcel creates this proposed severance would propose one severed lot and then two retained lots. So the severed lot would be is proposed to be rezoned through this application to an environmental protection zone. And the retained lots, one of them has an existing dwelling that would be rezoned to the R1-2 zone. Currently, it's zone plan development. And there is another retained lot about 0.61 hectares in size that's proposed to also be rezoned to the R1-2 zone. That second retained lot currently has no buildings or structures on it. So the proposed severed lot has an area, as I mentioned, about 2.83 hectares. It has frontage along Nelson Road, Bruce Road 25, and Bruce Road 23. It's essentially immediately to the south across the road from the Unifor Center. Lot 1 contains an existing single attached dwelling that's serviced with municipal water and a private septic system. This lot has an area of approximately 0.58 hectares. And has frontage on both Bruce Road 33 and Bruce Road 25. So it's at the corner of those roads. Retained lot 2 is vacant and has a lot area of about 0.61 hectares and fronts onto Olive Street. The subject property is also directly north of a separate consent application, which is Chapel B18, and that is similarly to convey additional lands to the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy for conservation purposes. So as I mentioned, the proposed amendment would rezone the lands from the planned development and environmental protection zone to the environmental protection zone, and portions of it would be rezoned R12. The lands are currently wooded. The only structure on the property right now is the existing single detached dwelling at the corner of roads 33 and 25. So on page 2 of my report, you'll see a sort of an air photo showing the context of the proposed of the subject property. And you can see it's surrounded by a mix of low density residential uses, except lands to the east across Bruce Road 33 are rural residential and agricultural. Site plan is shown on page 3 of my report, and you can see the different lot areas and frontages that are proposed. If you refer to the back, the attached zoning bylaw amendment, you'll see the proposed plan for zoning. Looking at the through the official plan, the property is designated primary urban community and is part of the Port Elgin urban settlement area in the Bruce County official plan. It's designated shoreline residential and an environmental hazard on Schedule A of the town of Saugeen Shores official plan. So the shoreline residential designation permits a variety of low density residential dwellings. The environmental hazard designation obviously does not permit any buildings or structures except for those intended for flood or erosion control. So this severed parcel is in the entirety within the environmental protection designation, and there would be no development on that parcel. It would be entirely for conservation purposes. The intent, as I mentioned, is to preserve the severed lot in its natural state. The application would preserve a wooded drainage system and open space linkages, which conform with the policies in the town's official plan and in the county's official plan. For the 2 retained lots, so the residential parcels, these lands are either with the existing dwelling is serviced with the existing water system. The newer retained residential lot that's currently vacant is on Olive Street, could easily be connected to municipal water services. There are a series of partial servicing policies since this part of Port Elgin is partially serviced, and the application conforms with those policies. So the Saugeen Shores official plan also has policies on partial servicing. I've outlined those as well. Essentially, the lots need to be large enough to be few in this area. The policies require that the lots must be a size large enough to permit a future severance of those lands if full municipal services are ever brought into the area. So these lots are suitably sized and are in keeping with the other lot sizes and frontages in this neighborhood. Moving on to the draft zoning bylaw amendment, you'll see the retained lot would be zoned entirely environmental protection, and those portions of the 2 retained lots that are currently zoned EP would continue to be zoned EP. So the difference is that the portions of those lands currently zoned planned development would now be rezoned to the residential 1-2 zone. So we received several comments from agencies. The town's comments from the town's development planning services have no comments or no concerns rather regarding the application. Enbridge Gas had some just advisory call us before you dig type of comments that are included in the application. SVCA noted that the applications are acceptable to them and they have no concerns. We received 2 comments from the public. Just one was just kind of wanted more information on the proposal and just wanted to confirm the use of the severed lot. So I had a telephone chat with him to confirm that what the application is intending here. And another comment said they disagreed with the rezoning. Were worried about more residential development in the area and the impacts on the creek. So we've considered both comments and we don't recommend any changes to the application. As mentioned, the purpose of the application is to protect the environmental features on the severed lot while permitting future residential development on retained lot 2. So with that, we recommend approval of the draft zoning bylaw amendment, and I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor, if you have any questions on my report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get to questions in a bit, but for now, we will hear from members of the public. So I'll ask if the applicant or the applicant's agent is present, and if they are, if they wish to speak. Doesn't look like it. They're not online, I guess. Is there anybody online related to this application?
Mr. Scott is being transferred over from the attendee as into a panelist. I believe he's here for the application.
Okay.
Is it so? This is the applicant or the agent or their agent? Okay, so Mr. Scott, do you wish to speak to this application? If you do, state your name and your relationship to the application.
My name's Donald Scott. I'm principal of Question Planning Consultants in Owen Sound, and we have been retained, first of all, by the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy, and we're working for them as well as for Wendy Wark. We've been working on this for some time. The recommendations of the planning staff, David's recommendations, we're prepared to support. I think he's covered all the policy matters quite well, and we're not too concerned about whether it's zoned OS or EP, because the intent is that it be preserved in perpetuity for open space in order to preserve the wooded drainage system that goes through there. I think the description, I wasn't able to see the draft bylaw, but by the description, we are not really, don't have any problems with the proposal, and just wanted to advise that we're prepared to support the application as presented by staff. Any question, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, very good. We'll, as I say, we'll come back to questions later, but for now, we'll just keep making our way through the public portion of the meeting, and I'll ask, so we've heard from the agent of the applicant, and thanks very much for that. So I'll ask now, are there any members of the public here either to speak in support of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application? Don't see anybody in the room jumping up. Is there anybody online to speak to it?
No, there's nobody online.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we have anybody else from the public here to speak to this. And I'll ask, are there any written submissions that have not already been discussed in the planning report, presentation, or oral submissions?
No, sir.
Okay. So then I will now ask committee members if they have any final questions on the application before we close the public meeting for discussion of the application. And I see Councillor Halpin.
I'm not sure I got this right. Are we supposed to wait for our comments till after?
Yeah, we're asking questions at this point, and then
I'm not going to ask a question.
no,
I just have a comment. Thank
okay, sure, good enough. Thank you. So I'll turn over then to Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, when I look at the map, I guess it's more the overview of the severance. I think it's on page 3 of 19. The proposed retained lot shows the existing septic bed. And it looks like that septic bed is quite close to the property line. I just wonder if anybody's measured that to see, as I know there has to be a a distance, and the number escapes me at the moment, but there's a distance you have to be from the property line with the septic bed. And I just wonder if that's been adequately addressed in the application.
Maybe we could put that question to the planner or possibly to Mr. Scott, the agent.
Yeah, I have the site plan that I'm looking at right now. I'm just going to try to open up a better version of it because I'm struggling to read it. Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like it's 3 meters to the rear from the sort of the rear lot line, and then I think it says 6.4. But for some reason, it's really fuzzy. Just give me one moment, and I'll look it up. Yeah, so approximately 3 meters on one side and 6.4 meters on the other side.
So I guess the council's question is, does that meet all of the requirements and setbacks, et cetera, that would apply to a situation like this?
I'm going to go and open up. I'll just flip to the zoning bylaw page here just to tell you what the setback requirement is.
If I may, those setbacks are based on the requirements of Section 8 of the Ontario Building Code, which regulates Class 4 sewage systems. So that meets the Ontario Building Code standards. So that's something we did make sure it conformed with before we present it to Mr. Wellwood.
Okay, thanks for that comment, Mrs. Scott. And Mr. Wellwood, anything to add to that?
Just making sure. So there's an interior side yard setback for structures in the R1 zone of 1.2 meters. So that's side yards. They're well within that. But the rear yard, it's just is 7.5 meter requirements. So this is seeing which side is defined as it's the narrow side that's defined as the front. This is an awkwardly shaped piece of property, as just with the being on a corner and having the southwest east side is the front yard. So what we have here is a 6.4 meter rear yard setback and a 3 meter side yard setback. So there is a slight variation from the 7.5 meter rear yard requirement, which could be encapsulated in the bylaw as well, if you wish.
The Director of Development Services has a comment.
Yes, thank you. No, it's David. This provision is a unique one. The septic systems are not considered structures, and so the setbacks are, there's no zoning issue for compliance. So we rely on the building code for where septics should be located on the property.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification. Are there further questions at this point from members of council? Don't see any. So if there's no more questions from the committee, then we can now declare the public meeting to be closed. And so then what I will do at this point is read the recommendation. Give me one moment. So subject to the review of submissions arising from the public meeting, it's recommended that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z 2023-042 and bylaw 91-2023. So discussion on that. We'll start with the deputy mayor and then come to Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. And through you, I view this as a good news application and just want to express my appreciation to the Wark family for seeing this as a good way to contribute to the future of a community that obviously means something very special to them. I did want to make a comment, and there's a bit of a question, but I don't believe it fit in earlier. I appreciate the distinction between OS and EP, and I think labeling the lands that will go to the biosphere as EP makes good sense. Certainly, that would still enable public use in very limited ways with passive outdoor kinds of recreation. Labeling those lands as OS would open up the potential for some other activity there. So I think that was a good decision. And I just wanted to comment on that I liked seeing that. I do, though, want to ask a question. There's the Conservation Authority comments in here, bring to light the changes with provincial legislation recently, and they say that they can speak for natural hazards, but that they no longer have the ability to speak for natural heritage. Would like to know who has that responsibility now, because Luke's pointing at himself. So the mayor has that responsibility. But because this is an application that speaks very much to natural heritage. And so, certainly, I think if it's us, then let's speak up on its behalf loud and clear on this. But this is really a good news application, and certainly will represent, I think, a wonderful addition to that part of Port Elgin, that part of Saugeen Shores going forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I guess I'm just echoing the Deputy Mayor's comments that this is just a really good news story, and hats off to the Works for doing this and for setting that land aside. People in Saugeen Shores really do care about the environment, and this is just another example of ways people are making good decisions and really contributing to our natural legacy. So hats off to the Works for doing this, and they have my full support.
You, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
I just want to echo those thoughts to the Work family. I think this is just wonderful. Just a good planning. So I go in acres, instead of hectares these days. I'm older, but 6.99 acres, 6.99 acres to the Niagara Biosphere Conservancy. I mean, it's just incredible that those lands are going to be protected, conservation lands in perpetuity. So it's just a good news story. We're preserving that woodland and sort of the Works. God bless you. I think this is wonderful. And I live down that area. I walk regularly past that property and drive my car past there too, and my bike. But I've often thought, what's going to happen to that property someday, right? Because it's a bushed area, and surely there's going to be housing in there someday. How many houses? And but 2 lots, right? And 7 acres preserved. So I just think this is really good planning. I'll be supporting it for sure. And I just want to again say thank you to the Works for great thing doing for the community. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Are there further comments before we vote on this? I agree with all of that's been said there. And what it's important to put a point on is that this is how we preserve the woodlands in the community, by striking a balance between development on the developable lands and preserving woodlands at the same time, right? These lands are zoned planned development. Some development is going to occur on the lot, and some woodland is going to be preserved. And so there is no moratorium on development on this site. We're allowing some development to proceed. And that's the balance that we can strike in lots of places around our community to allow development to proceed while also protecting important pieces of woodland. So it's a good model we've already done it in many circumstances, and it's a model that we can achieve for the future. I hope both council and developers will all look at this going forward and use this as a bit of a template to say, I own a piece of wooded land. Here's how I might propose to develop it so that I can find something that council might support and the community might support. So it really is, as all have said, this property owner is sort of setting a great example for how we can develop the rest of the community while preserving our tree cover. So it's a great thing. All right, so you've heard the recommendation. I'll ask all in favor. I do. Okay, I need a mover and seconder. I'll get Councillor Grace and Councillor Halpin. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we will move on to our second one. Give me half a sec just to scroll back here. Okay, so next on the agenda is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2023-037 for Getz. And it is a public meeting under the Planning Act. The meeting on this file is now open. The The purpose of the public meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. First, we will receive a report from the planning staff. Then we will hear from the applicant or their agents. Then we will hear from any members of the public. Members of the public are advised that the ability to appeal the decision on this application may be limited if you have not provided comments on the application before the decision is made. Comments may be made verbally before the committee or submitted to staff in writing before the bylaw is passed. And of course, just remind folks again that we have a 5-minute time limit on verbal submissions. After we've heard from the public, the committee will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So I will now ask the planner on the file to present the application.
Thank you. The purpose of the application this evening is to rezone the property to allow for 3 additional residential dwelling units in an accessory building and to permit them more than 45 meters from the principal building. If approved, the application would recognize the existing dwelling units which have been constructed without building permits at 154 Concession 10. A county official plan amendment was considered by the Bruce County Planning and Development Committee and was approved on September 21st. Additional residential units may be permitted in any designations where residential uses are permitted as a primary use or in the agricultural designation, subject to the requirements of the zoning bylaw. In the agricultural designation, only 1 additional residential unit is permitted, whether in the building containing the primary dwelling unit or in a detached building. County Planning and Development Committee approved to permit 3 additional residential units in the agricultural areas designation for this property. The 3 dwelling units are located within the Honeybee building on the site plan. 1 dwelling unit is on the ground level, and the 2 dwelling units are on the 2nd floor. The additional units will provide opportunities for live-work opportunities for employees for the businesses on site. There are no anticipated land use compatibility issues with adjacent land uses, which include residential dwellings to the east and west. Public comments were received from a neighboring property owner, Ken Martin, relating to previous bylaw infractions, parking concerns, and the proximity of the agricultural building to the road. The agricultural building meets all required setbacks and is existing. There is adequate parking on site for the proposed use. No comments of concern were received from agencies, and this concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your report. So we will now we will now hear from members of the public. And to begin with, we'll hear from the applicant or their agent. I see their agent coming up. So Mr. Davidson, we'll get you to take the mic and give us your name and your relation to the application.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Ron Davidson. I'm a planning consultant and I represent the landowner, Nick Getz. He is right here in the yellow sweater. So you heard Julie speak that this required an official plan amendment to allow for 3 apartment units as opposed to just 1, I think is what the official plan usually allows for. And that was given favorable consideration a couple of weeks ago by county council. So this is our 2nd public meeting. Tonight, of course, we're dealing with the rezoning. So first of all, this is the former drive-in theater property for some of you who are old enough to remember that. Nick owns the property, of course. He built his house on it and he has erected 3 buildings that are used for his 2 businesses. He has honey making operation and concrete pouring business. There's municipal water supplied to the site and there are 2 septic systems that service the buildings. Now, the most recently constructed building, which is why we're here tonight, was issued a building permit for agricultural purposes since it was to be used for making honey. Nick does in fact now use most of that building for making honey, but he also added 3 apartment dwellings, which were not mentioned in the building permit. And again, as I said at county council, as a land use planner, I cannot condone that approach. I do not support the idea of building first and seeking permission later. For what it's worth, if you care, I originally thought I wouldn't work on the project. I looked at the property. I liked what I saw. Reviewing the official plan, and there is considerable merit. So if you have questions about how we got to this point, those questions aren't for me. I'll speak to the merit of the application very quickly. I know I have about 3 minutes left. First and foremost, there's a serious housing shortage in Saugeen Shores here with regard to rental housing. I hear that, as you know, I come here a lot as a planning consultant. And I hear quite often that we should be allowing or promoting or encouraging or requiring accessory dwelling units, ADUs in houses. Quite often your council will send me back or the developer back to the drawing board, come back when you have some accessory dwelling units. We've got some accessory dwelling units here. They're strongly supported by this approach is strongly supported by the provincial policy statement, the Bruce County official plan, and the Saugeen Shores official plan. To speak to the shortage, Mr. Getz himself has a shortage. He has 2 of his employees that live in a motel. They're wanting to get in here really quickly. The units, by the way, are empty. It's my suggestion. Do not fill the units just yet. And so there are 2 employees waiting to move in, and the third one I'm sure will be scooped up really quickly. I've seen the units, I've walked through them. They're spacious and they're very, very nice. So we're introducing a very nice unit or 3 very nice units. Just wrapping up here. Yeah, it's not technically in the urban area, but I think if you're standing on the road and you looked around, you'd think you're in the urban area. To the south is the business park. It's in the urban area. To the immediate west, that's the urban boundary as well. So this property is not. I can only make an assumption at some point, maybe that the town of Saugeen Shores, when they expand the urban boundaries, might include these lands in the urban area. It would make sense. Lastly, in terms of land use compatibility, I can't see any. I mean, there's residential uses to the east and residential uses to the west. This seems to make a lot of sense. Bottom line is there's a lot of merit with this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davidson. So we've heard from the agent of the applicant. So now we will go on to ask if there's anyone else from the public here to speak either in support of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. I see a couple names here, but let's see Mr. Sparks, Grant Sparks on here. If you come on up and just push the button on the microphone there and state your name, just push the, there you go.
Sure.
All right.
Grant Sparks. I live to the west of the proposed property, and I see exactly what this fella said is the same. I'm a tradesperson. I've lived here my whole life, and it is almost impossible to find a place to live. I've got kids now that are 20, 21. They can't afford to get an apartment. Like they'll never buy a house here, right? Unless they work at Bruce Power, get $1 million house. My daughter lives in Peterborough. She rents an apartment or a house with 5 other girls. It's a dump. Like it's obviously not done legally. The rooms are small and shitty. Sorry about that. But I have no problem with it. It doesn't, I don't oppose it at all. It will not affect me at all. Our house is residential beside it to the west. Like I said, if I had the same business, I would hate to almost be in business and you have employees that don't have a place to live. Won't bother. Like I said, they have parking. It's a nice looking building. Like I'd be happy to live there. So, by what I've seen around. So I just think with our lack of housing here, and it's just because our place has boomed so much in the last 10 years, it's really nobody's fault, but it's just hard to keep on top of that. So 3 apartments, I think is a great benefit to our area that these guys don't have to live in their car or a motel or whatever. So, and if I was living in my car, I may move on and, then you end up losing your staff that way. So really all I have to say, I have no problem with it. I fully support it. And I just can't see anything bad about it, to be honest with you. So I think that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm in support of it.
Yeah.
Just push that out or.
That's fine. I think we may have somebody else come up here anyway. I see Mr. Scott Turner, and so come on up, sir, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm just here. I'm relative of Nick's. I'm his uncle. I've known him for 12 years. I know he has a business that's quite successful, and he's an upstanding member of the community and employs some people that I do know. And I know that we do have a shortage of housing in Port Elgin, and I have seen the units that we're talking about, and they are some of the nicest apartments I've seen in my lifetime. So I just wanted to give my props for the way they were built. And I support the motion to honor a permit and get this thing done. I know we need housing here and I'd like to see it happen. So thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, so are there any other members of the public either here or are there any online who wish to speak to us?
There's no one online, sir.
Okay, so are there any written submissions that have not already been discussed in the planning report?
No, sir.
Okay. So then I'll ask if any committee members have final questions on the application before we close the public meeting and discuss the application. So I'll start with the deputy mayor and then come to Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, I have two questions. One of the letters that came in asked a question about home-based businesses. I just wanted to make sure that it was mentioned that there are two businesses operating on this piece of property. That is okay, right? There's not anything that we should perhaps be addressing through any kind of bylaw situation right now that takes care of that too. So because the question was how many home-based businesses can be on one parcel of land? And it was mentioned that there are two. Is that acceptable in the zoning in that area?
Why don't we put that to the planner or maybe we can start with the planner. Ms. Deeper.
I will defer to Jay. I think Jay has some history on that.
Okay, the manager, development services.
Yes, thank you. This property just a few years ago went through a planning exercise to permit the businesses and the structures as they are built now. It's sort of the interior design, which is the effect of this application.
Thank you for that. And my second question is, as it's been mentioned, construction occurred that happened without the benefit of a building permit. I would just like to know, how is that addressed now in terms of going back and dealing with a building permit? How does the town address that?
Manager development services.
Yeah, so there's a process for when this is recognized, but right now we're in sort of the compliance determination. So it was identified by building staff that these units were not compliant, and we give the opportunity to the landowner to seek compliance either by removing them or through the zoning. And if and when the council passes a bylaw in support, there'll be a penalty applied to the permits that will allow staff to sort of discourage this from happening, but also ensure that the human health and safety inspections review of the design can be properly addressed through the code.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I'd like to ask the proponent why they built without a building permit. I mean, certainly someone involved in the construction industry like that knows that building permits are required. Why would you proceed without a building permit?
You can put that to the applicant. I don't know, does the applicant wish to respond to that?
Nick Getz, the owner here of 154 Concession 10. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, to answer your question there, when we started our building process, like sort of the permit got approved for honeybee building, and we were supposed to do all of our honey over there. And then there was a time in the summer when I think it was Saugeen Shores, whether it was the mayor or not, we come across it, how you're allowed 3 apartments on one property. At that point, we thought about, we had 4 different units in this place. If down the road, we could potentially make these into apartments. They were just square units at the time. And I was actually in contact with Josh Plons from the building department. And I told him straight up exactly what we were doing the whole entire time. And he did say that's when, yeah, you have to do the right course and then go ahead and do the alteration as to take the proper course to get the certain zoning done, right? They were still square buildings. There's absolutely nothing in there. It's still drywall, whether I wanted to use it for honey or not. There is some plumbing that was done washroom wise. I was upfront with Josh about this. So it's not like I just went ahead, all knew all along I was going to do have these as apartments. They were actually for a capping room, for a washing station, and so forth with the other two, right? But I did, you know, with communicating with the building department and seek the right avenues to make sure that I wasn't, you know, doing this improperly and just trying to blindside the town and go ahead and do everything, right? So that's why there was no like stop order or anything like that. It was me and him were talking, and he never put, again, a stop order on it. And I immediately, you know, got people on board with Bruce County and got a planner involved to seek the right action to properly do this, right? So I wasn't trying to blindside anybody. It, like I said, when I heard that come out, how you're allowed, you know, the shortage of housing and you're allowed three apartments, I immediately thought, well, these would be great spaces for that. And then again, with my workers as well, like there's guys that were living in their cars. Like construction is, you can't hold a guy longer than 40 days because they don't know where they're living or they're, you know, in trouble. And here they are living in a couple motels. And you know, we want, you know, nothing but the best. If they want to, you know, live on the property, that's a great idea. So, but yeah, to clear that up, like I wasn't trying to do this without a, you know, a permit or whatever. I'm just trying to make sure the right steps or whatever. So.
Through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Follow.
Councillor Hopper.
I'm personally committed to working with contractors and developers. I believe that we can have progress and preservation. I really want to see the needs of Saugeen Shores housing met. Many developers have said, well, we should have a rules-based approach to building, that, you know, we all just follow these simple rules and everyone knows what to do. I agree with that. However, I do not appreciate the break the rules and ask for forgiveness approach. And whether it's guys going in and clear cutting a whole bunch of trees before they have full permission or anything like that, if contractors and developers want a rules-based approach, it's got to go both ways. It's got to go both ways. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there other questions or comments from members? We'll start with Councillor Davinsky and then we'll come to Councillor Mayette. Oh, turn your mic on there, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the proponent, Mr. Getz. You mentioned that it was sort of a backwards way of doing it originally with putting in these three. Do you have a building permit for those three apartments as of now?
Well, he probably can't get a building permit because it's not zoned yet, right? So we have to go through this process first.
Can I ask the question of the proponent, please?
You can. I'm just clarifying the question. I guess I can ask Mr. Getz if you want to answer.
No, I don't have a building permit for those three apartments. And like I said, there's nobody in those apartments. It's just a square room. There's nothing in them.
No, and I would have never done who's in it, who isn't. It's the building permit. It should have been done beforehand, obviously, and it wasn't. So
I do have a building permit for the 4 rooms for Honey, right? But again, it's just a square room. There's no blinds on the thing. It's just drywall. It's just an empty room with some plumbing. That's it. And that's where Josh stopped me. So to answer your question, I don't have a building permit for those apartments, but that's why I'm here to try to get them into apartments. They still can be used for Honey.
Okay, thank you. I'll have a comment later.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, like Councillor Halpin said previously, the methodology I'm not terribly thrilled about, but the end result is something that I am thrilled about. That building, you know, buildings, and from the picture, it looks like what some people call a barn dominium or a shop house. And whether or not that was your intent going into it, but to clarify, you did have a building permit to build a shop for your Honey. And then at some point during that process, you changed gears and decided to take a portion of that and make it into ARUs for your employees or anybody else. Would that be an adequate?
Yes, that's correct. Like I was explaining before, it's when that thing came out about the 3 apartments, I kind of changed gears is a perfect way to say it. And like I still today have these guys living in Cedar Court Motel and another one here in Port Elgin, that they would, you know, cough these up if we can approve this, right? This isn't just, you know, slap something together here. This is my whole property. You're more than welcome to come out and see it, any of you counselors, but it's all done. Everything's tucked away nicely. Like it's not like a big junkyard. It's properly done. And I've used, you know, my hard work ethics to properly make this a beautiful property. So.
And it appears that way from the photos. I haven't been on the property, but it appears as though there's been a lot of quality construction take place. And I just wanted to clarify that there was a building permit in place for the foundation and the original intention. And now you're seeking a revised building permit to accommodate the 3 residential units within that building.
That is correct. Yes, a revised permit. Yes.
Once again, I'll reinstate what I started with is I'm not crazy about the methodology, but I appreciate the intent. And for that reason, well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor. Okay, so we'll wait till after we're done. Yeah. Okay, so are there any further questions at this time? Oh, sorry, Councilor Grace, missed you up there. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify with the proponent, because a couple of the speakers on his behalf, or at least one anyway, mentioned how lovely the apartments are. So are the apartments completed and ready to be moved into? Or I'm a little confused because you were referring to just drywall. So I'd just like a clarification. Are the apartments completed and ready to be, are they completely habitable?
They're like I said, they are drywall. There is plumbing. There is toilets in there, like the washrooms and stuff like that. But it would be a little bit of time before I could actually potentially move anybody in there. Like we did epoxy the floors, but even if we were doing the B shop, that was still going to be epoxied and all that as well. There's no blinds. You can see right in through the windows. But it would be some time before people could move into them for sure. Like there's obviously stairs going up to the second levels as well, because that would have been in the plan originally for the Honeybee building. You need the stairs and everything to go up as well. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? I don't see any. So we'll now declare the public meeting to be closed. And so then we will consider the application, and I'll just go back to the resolution. Okay, so subject to a review of submissions arising from the public meeting, it's recommended that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z 2023-037 and bylaw 92-2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Comments or further questions for the planner? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
I have a comment. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just picking up on what Mr. Davidson said, there's just a whole lot of merit to this application. And, you know, you've got a local business owner that had a building permit, and through conversation with Mr. Plants, or Chief Building Official, I'm not sure that's the right title, but Mr. Josh Plants was told that he needs to come in and get some rezoning on that property for 3 apartment units. And I think we talked about the need for accessory dwelling units. Mr. Davidson mentioned that, and you're absolutely right. We've talked about that many times in this room, about the need for apartment units. And here you got a business owner that wants to move 3 of his employees in there to provide accommodation for his workers, so they're not living in a motel. So we're getting a little bit twisted, I think, around the building permit thing. It was caught. You know, the owners said, I want to do this right, and I want to get the building permit for 3 apartment units. I think it's just a really, really good, solid planning application in terms of, you know, meeting the need. There's a lot of merit to this. So I just want to commend you, Mr. Gates, for providing 3 more units, you know, for our community, for rental units. I think that's a good thing. And from what I'm hearing is going to be pretty nice units too. And these aren't real small apparently. So Anyways, I'll be supporting it. I just think this is a really solid application and again, you're to be commended.
Okay, further comments from members? Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm having a problem supporting this development at this point in time, which is already built. And I might add, it looks great. I was out there yesterday. Didn't go on your property, Nick, but I did stay on the roadway, and it's a wonderful building. But I have this problem of don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And then the town gives in every time. It could very well be a way of doing business nowadays. I'm having a problem accepting that. This isn't the first time this has happened, and I'm not referring to Mr. Getz. I'm referring to, we've had other issues come up this way. Do it and then go to council and get forgiveness. And then we end up supporting development that's already done or being done. And we have to do the tap dancing. We have rules for a reason. And I don't think it's unreasonable that we expect everyone to follow them. I suspect this is going to pass. And that's great for you and your workers. But I'm having a problem with the concept, the philosophy, and we have to draw a line in the sand and say, follow the rules or else. For instance, if you have a building permit or you don't have a building permit and you do all the work and then you say, okay, I'll go get a building permit. Well, it should cost you more than the regular building permit to cover staff time and to cover us. And I understand from Jay Posner that there is an extra charge of some sort. But we have to start saying, follow our rules, pay the price. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments from members? Oh, yes, sorry, the Director of Development Services wants to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to offer a few thoughts that might suggest that the history and the way this application and building unfolded might be a little different from some of the others that present a build, ask forgiveness later type of situation. In this instance, we have an agricultural property with an agricultural building that was applied for and the permit was issued, and there's nothing wrong with the agricultural building that's there. The issue arises from the interest in including the units in the building, and that was addressed during the process, and the building and renovation process was ceased until the zoning compliance could be addressed. And so here we are. So it's less than ideal, but not a classic build forgive scenario. Another thought is to note that in the agricultural zone, a unit for farm help is allowed as of right. So the non-compliance really is 3 versus 1, to put it that way, if that's of help. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Councilor Grace, I think, had her hand up. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Director Powley for making those comments, because that does clear up something for me. I wonder, this is sort of a question, but Mr. Mayor, would it be possible to have the Director of Development Services tell us what the penalty would be in a situation like this? Jay, you mentioned some kind of an extra charge.
Sure, we can ask the director. All right, we'll go to the Manager of Development Services.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it right now. On our website, we say that for permits, building without a permit, subject to a penalty of 50% of the permit value. So if the permit is, say, $1,000, the penalty is assessed at 500. You pay the $1,000 permit plus the penalty. If it's assessed by the CBO that in fact there was a building without a permit.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
But just to clarify, there was a building permit.
Well, there's permits for a number of issues, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
nice.
Thank you. So there's permits for, any structure like farm buildings, storage buildings, lots of types of structures under the code. I'm going to try to avoid speaking outside my expertise, but, there's permits for plumbing inspections and design. There are permits for dwellings and particular units within dwellings. So there's opportunity to look at what types of permits are required for these 3 units, because we want to assess the under the code for their, as I said earlier, for human health and safety, make sure they're properly designed so that they meet fire code and every other element of the building code.
Just as a follow-up to Councillor Grace, so Mr. Mayor, through you to Jay. So Jay, what if this penalty is imposed, which I'm not necessarily in support of, but what would the cost be then, Jay? You mentioned 1,000 per 1,000 what?
Well, it's 50%. So, and this is where we'd have to look at the detailed design and be able to calculate what the fees. These are the fees and charges bylaw passed by the town that determines these fees, and they're certainly need a specialty just to determine what the fee is.
We don't know a ballpark figure. Okay.
Okay. We'll go Councillor Mayat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. As I said earlier, the result is a good one. Having additional residential and presumably affordable for your employees is a good thing in our community, and people who have the space and the opportunity to do that should be encouraged to do so. And with regards to the building code, I don't profess myself to be an expert on the building code. I've seen issues with it. I've seen parts of it, but when I want to find out how to comply with the code, I seek advice from an expert, whether it's an in-house expert or in the case of Mr. Getsy's hired Mr. Davidson. And I applaud that move. And I encourage anybody who is contemplating a building or contemplating perhaps a change of use of a building, and that if you don't understand the building code implications, you should retain the services of an expert, be it inside the town or services of somebody like Mr. Davidson over here. So it seems that's what the proponent has done here. And for those reasons, I will be supporting this application. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further comments? Councillor Dubinsky.
Just one more comment. I will, and this is going to sound one way or the other, I will be supporting this particular issue, but I think there's a bigger issue, and that is we've got to start playing hardball to make sure the rules are being followed. We can't let people just do what they want willy-nilly and then correct it later. That's all I'm saying. So this is a terrific thing that should happen, and it looks very nice. So I'll be supporting.
Yeah, thank you. I think the point is, and I made my comments clear at Bruce County when we spoke about this, this is something that would normally be a slam dunk with this council, right? This rezoning, right? This would be a thing that would get unanimous support. You wouldn't even have a debate probably, or much of one, because if it had come forward in the right order, it would have been widely supported. You have this inflection here on council among members, this doubt because of it happened out of order, right? A rezoning needed to happen. A county official plan amendment needed to happen before this could be allowed, right? And so I think that there's no question that the building code needs to be complied with, but even more fundamentally to this discussion, the zoning bylaw and official plan needs to be abided by, and it hasn't been through the development of these units, right? So that's an error. It's an error that the applicant has made, and my comments at Bruce County were that, as I say, I'm a strong supporter of these types of developments. I think this is great, and I supported it at Bruce County. I'll support it again tonight, but we can't have any more of these. Certainly from this proponent, definitely from this proponent, because, so I would say that that's the message back. If we see any more issues like this from the proponent, my vote will be no. And regardless of what the planner recommends. But for tonight, my vote will be yes. I think this is a good development, and looking forward to seeing Mr. Getz's employees living in this facility and other folks, because we certainly can use the housing, and it's a positive development. So I will ask then, you've heard the recommendation, or do you have I got one. It's moved and seconded. This time I did it. The clerk is training me slowly. So I'll ask now, all in favor? That's carried. Okay. So we're done with our public meetings. Now we're going to go on to a close to public session. And I have a recommendation. So this is a close to public session for education and training pertaining to site plans. And I have a recommendation that council move into a closed to public session in accordance with Municipal Act 2001, section 2392, 3.1 as follows. 1, the meeting is held for the purpose of educating and training, of educating or training the members. And 2, at the meeting, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision making of the council, local board, or committee. Is there a mover and seconder? Vice Deputy Mayor and Davinsky, all in favor? The committee will move into closed session. Thank you. in the capable hands of it's been delegated, or clerking responsibilities have been delegated to the Director Development Services, so you know. Clerking, let's do a bunch of referrals and deferrals and motions to amend here, shall we? Are you up on your Robert's rules there? Okay, are we ready to go, Mark? Okay, so I will we have a recommendation or a resolution that council arise from the close of public session and resume the regular council meeting. As their mover and seconder, Stack and Davinsky, all in favor? That's carried, and I will report that in the closed session, council received education and training pertaining to site plans. Okay, so now we are on to report of municipal officers and committees, and the first item there is site plan for 570 Johnson Avenue, submitted by 1365267 Canada Incorporated. And there is a recommendation, there is a recommendation that council receive the site plan for 570 Johnson Avenue, submitted by 1365267 Canada Incorporated, report for information. And we'll turn it over to Candace Ham if she has any comments, the Development Services Officer.
Good evening, through you, Mayor Charbonneau, and thank you, Council. I do plan to highlight just some of the main topics of my report that you have in front of you. And so this is a site plan application, but you have seen this before you for two other Planning Act applications, being the official plan amendment and also the zoning bylaw amendment. And the property is currently also going through a consent application to separate the property into two parcels. So what I would like to highlight is that this proposal is aligning with the newly adopted urban existing neighborhood design guideline. And so really wanted to just focus on that guideline document and how the proposal aligns. So first and foremost, this is one of the types of infill housing that the guidelines do recommend in the intensification portion. And so these lands are currently vacant and would be considered underutilized in an established area of Port Elgin. Under the overall goals and design principles of the guideline document, there are many different items that I will run through briefly now. So on the affordability front, when we look at this denser form of housing, the units are smaller in size and are therefore considered to be more affordable to own, rent, and maintain, both for homeowners and tenants. But I will highlight that these are rental units that we're looking at here this evening. In terms of active transport, this proposal is providing safe and barrier-free access to the existing active transport networks in the area, including sidewalks, lanes, trails, paths, etc. When we talk about universal and age-friendly design, we're looking at smaller units, and they do provide a basic level of accessibility that allows seniors to live independently for longer. But I will note that this proposal is going to be going to our Accessibility Advisory Committee later this week for more detailed review. In terms of heritage and culture, the proposal as shown in the renderings that are attached in my report is addressing the different architectural and built heritage features that we often see in this area of town. In terms of sustainability and climate ready design in the core commercial zone, we're looking for a minimum of 10% open space, and they are meeting that. They've also submitted a very extensive landscape plan that includes native species and follows the guidelines, aligns very well with the guidelines that we have different vegetative buffers and using vegetation and other visual screening for the on-site parking area. And we also consider this proposal at a staff level to meet the safety goals that are expressed in the guidelines. And at this stage, town staff are in a position to recommend approval of the drawings and negotiate an agreement with the developer. So tonight we are looking for your feedback, and I am open to answering any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. So you've heard the recommendation. Are there any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And through you, Candace did address a question that I had about excuse me, whether the units were owned or rented. So you did say that they were rental units. When we first saw this application, though, there was very specific mention of the fact that the first floor was intended to be accessible units. However, I note now your description of smaller units includes something there. So I look forward to hearing at some point what the accessibility committee has to say about the site plan. But I do note that the parking that's mentioned, it doesn't appear to have any accessible parking spaces. And in fact, 12 units, 12 parking spaces, I realize that there's some new rules about the availability of parking, but I would welcome a comment about where the expectation is for additional parking to provide opportunities for guests or, two cars in a unit for this, because there is very limited on-street parking in this area. So has there been any consideration of where is the potential for overflow parking? Because, I would guess even if the units are small, you could still have a couple there with 2 cars, and there's 12 spaces showing. My other comment that I'll just say, there's a question in it too. I really appreciate seeing that there doesn't appear to be parking along Waterloo Street anymore. I like that. I think that that's a good move going forward. I also just, there's lots of comments about trees in here, but the reality is that, with what has been taken down to enable the build, there's one rather mature maple tree still in one corner of the lot, of the apartment building lot, that the trees that will be coming in via the landscaping, it appears to me anyway, that there's 4 red buds up at the front. I do think that there's maybe an opportunity surrounding that garbage situation to do something a little more substantial there than just ornamental grass, because it certainly would provide, a feature other than a garbage disposal area. And I don't believe, although I think some things will have to change to enable all of this to occur, I don't know if there are power lines over there that would compete with that. But to me, that would be an opportunity to provide a little more coverage with a tree in that area to reflect the volume of trees that came down to enable the build. But I don't know if you can answer a question related to parking, but probably there's nothing that says there has to be any more parking, but I'm just curious where they think some more cars are going to go. Thank you.
The Development Services Officer.
Right. Thank you for the question. I do believe that in the consideration of the development proposal that they are looking for conformity with the bylaw in terms of the parking requirements. And that maybe isn't necessarily aligning with different aspects of where what we can actually meet on site. And so that they may be having to look elsewhere for that. Sure, if it's okay through you, Mayor Charbonneau, I will ask
the manager of Development Services.
Yeah, I just want to comment more on sort of larger commercial core context. It's certainly recognized there's need for parking for many developments, but the commercial core zone already exempts a lot of uses from parking, namely all commercial uses are exempt from parking. It also recognizes sort of a lower standard for parking for even residential uses. And I think the idea, especially when we consider the infill, is that these are units designed for smaller families. There may not be 2 cars. Certainly it would then rely on the landowner to market these to people that have only 1 car, say. But then it goes to the visitor question, as I think you explicitly asked, was, well, visitor parking doesn't necessarily mean overnight parking. There's still on-street options. There's still parking lots in the vicinity. Yes, it means people have to walk. It's a different way of living. And it's something, if we want to see more infill, if we want to see less space devoted to parking areas, we need to come to terms with, and using infill projects to examine how the impacts. Encourage everyone to visit or comment on the downtown parking strategy. I think the open houses are tomorrow and Wednesday. You correct me if I've got those dates wrong, but we're looking for input on how downtown parking is to be examined.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I wasn't particularly, supportive of the plan when it first came here because of the parking in Waterloo and landscape and a few other things. And I just thought it was too large for the size of the lot, but I really like what I'm seeing. And I hats off to the proponents, the developers for listening. I think that what the comments that council have made a while back, a few months ago now, I guess, I think they've responded, so I think it's really a good solid plan. I like the landscape plan. I had a couple of questions. The trees on Johnson Avenue there on the median, like in the middle of the boulevard, like in the middle of the road, are those existing trees? Right, they're existing probably. They're shown in the drawing. But I think they're existing, are they not? There's no plantings outside of the actual land, right? There's no trees being planted by the proponent, right?
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. No, the site works are limited to
Yeah.
the property that they own.
Yeah, I just saw they were showing there, and I think there's some existing trees there, if I'm not mistaken. So the 12 units, smaller units, do you have any idea what size those units are going to be? Are they 1 bedroom? Are they 2 bedroom? How large are they?
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. They are 2-bedroom units.
They're all 2-bedroom units, yeah. I don't know if it's an appropriate question tonight because I'm kind of interested in what the rents are in this community, but 2-bedroom unit, can we ask this question or not?
We don't control that through site plan. So no.
It was just really a point, that's fine. Curious to know, I'll talk to the developers another time.
Sure, the developer will be
What
able
they're
to
gonna
answer
rent
that
for.
offline.
So, okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like this. And the other question I had was just when it goes back to the recommendation, it says that council receive the site plan. Just clarification. We receive it. Why is that again, Jay, not approval? I just help me understand that.
We're receiving, the council received the site plan for report for information, right? So we're receiving this report for information.
Receiving it, but I'm just needing clarification from your own.
Sure.
Well, why again is it just being received? We don't approve site plans. We just receive them,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. That's correct. So the approval has been delegated to the CAO. So tonight we're presenting this report for information to receive feedback. And then I, at a staff level, will make a recommendation to
Right.
the CAO.
Yeah, I just need to have that clarified. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Yeah, Councilor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Candace. The space between the walkway between the existing home and garage and the proposed apartment building, how wide is that? And will there be, well, there will be a shadow effect, but according to these drawings, doesn't much matter because you're against blank walls. However, is there going to be lighting in that pathway for people that will be using it at night? We have to assume that in some cases it will be the elderly. Those are my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. The distance between the existing home and the proposed apartment building is 6 feet. And while it's not shown on the rendering information that's provided to you, there is actually lighting that is shown for both the parking areas and the walkways on the actual set of design drawings. And if that is something that isn't shown on there, then we can take that feedback back to the applicant.
Follow up. What kind of lighting are we talking about? Overhead, ground level, shooting up? What kind of lighting?
I don't believe I've gotten into the review of that specifically. I think it maybe goes beyond the scope of what could be included in that, perhaps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilor Stack.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions, and one is a clarification. So are you saying there are 6 feet between the proposed apartment building and the existing home on the lot, or the neighboring home?
Okay, sorry, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. Thank you. I think we've in discussions here, or I will make a correction that the walkway is 6 feet and there's an additional 7 feet of grassed area there.
Okay, thank you. And then so that's good. I was going to say that was a bit close for comfort. And then my other question is just the landscaping between the apartment building and the existing residence on a separate, the neighboring lot. How tall will those, do we have an approximation of how tall that greenery will get in terms of privacy? I know the residents had been concerned about privacy and shadow, so I'm just curious if we'd sufficiently address those concerns.
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau, I believe that the depiction on the renderings that shows that vegetation strip is likely representative of the height of those grasses and shrubs that will be planted along there.
Sorry, I think I'm probably going blind. I can't see how tall they are. Okay. Okay, so so 4.5, 5 feet is what I just heard, sorry. So, I know we don't really have much by way of approval, right? But I would, I want to articulate that I think there were some concerns around privacy. I'm not sure 4 or 5 feet is sufficient, given the size of the home, but they're already quite overshadowed by this building. So I just caution there's now less opportunity for privacy given the size of the buildings beside them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Candace, for the report. I just have a question about the percentage of area that's landscaped. I know your report says that it's required to be 10% in the minimum within the core commercial zone. What percentage does it end up being? I apologize if I missed that in your comments.
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. When we are presenting the information this evening, we are looking more so at design. And so that percentage of landscaped area is more zoning conformance, which has already been addressed through the previous applications. So I was pretty brief in my report to indicate that they have met and actually far exceeded that minimum 10%. I do not have the exact percentage before me this evening. My apologies.
Okay. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just for clarification, Councillor Stack was asking about the distances of separation on the side. I just want to make sure I understand. On both sides of the building, there's a sidewalk that's 6 feet. And then in addition to the sidewalk on both sides of the building, there's 7 feet beyond that until you get to the property boundary. Is that a correct assessment?
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So to the west, towards the existing dwelling on the property, there is a 6-foot wide sidewalk and then an additional 7 feet. On the east side of the proposed apartment building, no, there is a 6-foot sidewalk and then a vegetated buffer that is immediately adjacent to that is on the property line.
So the property owner who is technically not involved in this at all, because they're not involved in the severance, they basically have a sidewalk and then there's a low hedge of shrubs and then it's their property.
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further comments? No, I just would say for myself, I just agree with the comment of my major concern with this was the parking situation. Certainly did not want to see the parking on the street. And so that has been essentially entirely resolved in the site plan, which I think is great and appropriate, and otherwise pleased with the development and looking forward to seeing it under construction. Hopefully it will be soon. So with that, you've heard the recommendation, and I will ask, and I think I don't have to move it and second it because I am going to consider it later. So we'll ask all in favor? That's carried. Okay. This comes back in a minute with a bylaw. So no, it doesn't. I don't know what I'm doing. What have I done? What have I done? Is there a mover and seconder for that? Sorry, the Vice Deputy Mayor, Councillor Stack. It's been moved and seconded and carried. Okay. I will one day learn how to do this job. Here we go. So the next one is a report to establish 0.3 meter reserves as public highways for the Northport Meadows subdivision and the manager development services.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add other than a bit of an educational opportunity is that it's came up recently is sort of what's the purpose of the 1 foot reserves? We just identified that we want to ensure a more orderly and controlled manner of development and particularly future development. So where there are subdivisions that are done in phases, we just want to make sure the landowner doesn't go in and start building a road without our authority or start building houses without our authority. And so these tools we call 1 foot reserves are incorporated in the current plan. So when the next phase comes on, we call what's lift them or make them a part of the road system, which is what you're doing tonight. We're asking that these 1 foot reserves be incorporated as part of the road system.
Okay, thank you. So there is a resolution that council adopt bylaw 93, 2023 to establish block 2, plan 3M234 and block 82, plan 3M237 as part of the public road system. Is there a mover and seconder? The deputy mayor and councillor Halpin. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, then all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. All right, so then we will go on to bylaws. And we have 3 bylaws there. And so there is a resolution that bylaws 91, 2023, 92, 2023, and 93, 2023 are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 16th day of October 2023. Is there mover and seconder? Stack and Davinsky. Any discussion to these? Seeing none, all in favor. That is carried. And then the confirmatory bylaw, there's a resolution that bylaw 94, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the town of Saugeen Shores is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed the 16th day of October 2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Of Grace and Halpin. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, there is a resolution that this regular council meeting of October 16th, 2023 hereby adjourns at 8:27 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Halpin, Davinsky, all in favor? Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.